Hello. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining the live stream. Today, we have our first non Indian guest on our podcast. Her name is Rebecca BarSef. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, how you doing? Just so
Good.
you know, when I was traveling in Europe 10 years ago,
Hmm.
before we have had all the immigrants, everywhere I went, people were just looking at me as if I'm a strange animal. They couldn't say that where I'm from.
Hmm.
But all the Indians thought that I'm Indian. They were like, "You're from India." I'm like,
Yeah.
"No." I was like, "But I'm white." And say, "No, you look like someone who could be from the north." I
Exactly.
was like, "Oh."
Yeah. Very North Indian. They would probably just have to dye their hair, color their hair. So she is a pretty much a Israeli Gal Gadot, sort of a Wonder Woman herself. She's a CEO of her own company, CTO of her own company. She served for a while in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force Intelligence Department, and she's a YouTuber as well who discusses politics and Israeli situations, and has debates and conversations with people as well. Among many other things, she discusses masculinity as well, which we'll get to near the end of the interview if we get some time. First, Rebecca, tell us, when did you first realize or fathom the idea of being Jewish and also being Israeli? How did it feel different?
That's a good question because, like, you always feel it. Um, for me, I knew it from a very young age because I was actually born in Russia.
Okay,
And when the USSR collapsed, some of my family they got refugee status in the United States,
right.
where my parents were very much against that. And they said, like, we cannot going from one diaspora to another and we're going to move to Israel.
Oh,
And we did. And to be honest, I was okay. So my family is like twice refugees. So my family fled the civil war in Georgia to Russia, and then from Russia to Israel. Um, it, so my so I grew up like like I think the first thing was like why my grandparents are not with me.
hmm.
So this is like very early on, like when you're 3 4 year olds, is like why do my grandparents live so far away from me?
Hmm.
Because they chose to move to the US, where my mother decided to rebel and not come with them,
I see. So that was like your first realization
with
that
my
there's
father.
something is different with us.
Yes, because then they brought up the whole backstory of why we moved to Israel, why we chose, why it's so important for my parents to not stay in the diaspora.
What age was this? How old were you?
So like when I actually remember like those kind of like
Hmm.
4.
I see. And when were you told that told all the history of Hitler, etc.?
So you get exposed to it, I think, gradually.
Hmm.
First, it's like okay, there were catastrophes. A lot of people died. The older you get, the more details you learn.
I see.
So it feels like, in a way, like you always know.
Hmm.
You never. There is not such a thing as like okay, I just one day I discovered it. No, it's like
Right.
I've always known that there is some like sort of something tragic that happened.
Hmm. Right. And how are you all informed of these things? Is it with anger or sadness or just to remember that yeah this happened and it should never happen to us? What duties are you sort of inculcated with for when you grow up?
Pride,
Okay.
because we kept that tradition and that we uh, kept our morals and that we are now in a place where we can defend ourselves and redefine ourselves and be free.
Hmm. And this seems to be pretty heavy stuff. Is this also an awareness from the childhood itself, or like in the late
Yes,
adolescence?
yes,
I
yes.
see. And how many languages do you know?
So Russian, English, Hebrew, I know some Spanish and a little bit of Arabic too. A little bit of Georgian. I forgot now.
I
Most of
see.
it, I don't use it.
So,
But
was Hebrew learning the most prioritized, or English?
where?
Oh,
I mean, in
growing
Israel,
up.
everything is in Hebrew.
Yeah, but growing up, even
So
before
the
coming to
most
Israel.
in my family, Russian.
I see. Okay.
First, I didn't. I spoke Russian. I spoke Russian first,
Hmm.
then Hebrew. I remember going to kindergarten and not understanding. Like it's a weird memory that I didn't understand. As like I said, Mom, like I have this weird memory when I got first day like in kindergarten and we were all in a circle and the instructor was singing songs. It was like bring your hand forward, bring your leg forward, and this is what I remember. I told my mom, Mom, I remember that I I had to look what other people are doing and I just copied them.
Hmm.
Isn't it weird? And my mom was like, girl, you didn't speak Hebrew.
Hmm.
You didn't know what they were saying.
Okay.
You didn't understand and you had to copy. That's why.
Hmm.
I was like, because, I only got it. And then it's funny because Hebrew takes over. So Russian, I didn't speak Russian that well.
Hmm.
But my mom really, really fought for me to speak like proper Russian.
I see.
And English came later, way later.
Hmm. So, how religious are you?
I would say traditional. I'm not religious, but I'm not religious. It's because I think a lot of times people like when I ask about religion, they think about Christianity.
Hmm.
And Christianity is faith,
I see.
but Judaism is not necessarily faith, and this is something what I trying to explain in my channel as well.
Hmm.
It's not a faith necessarily. Faith was a big part of it because for a long time, like the debate was how do we explain our codes, our laws, our morals if there is no faith? Like they actually like the discussion between rabbis that you can read is saying, well, without God, how do we convince people that this is the right thing to do, that you cannot lie because that's not the right thing to do? It's easier to say, okay, you can't lie because there is a divine power.
Hmm.
And with more modern Judaism, when atheism became a real thing. Okay, what would motivate people to do the right thing if they don't believe that they get anything from it,
Right.
or not necessarily get anything from it, because like Judaism doesn't promise you anything,
Hmm.
but it does like tell you do that because but when people are like, okay, if they don't believe in God, then how do you explain why do they need something to do something that could in certain cases, many cases, not serve them at all short term, and even risk their lives if they're faced at a point where it's their morals, or they're put in a situation where they're at risk if they don't, if they follow their moral code. So what would be like the reason that they would still follow it?
Hmm.
And I really believe that for most Jews today, there is this real strong sense as like emunatam, like this trust that this is, you have to do it because you trust that this is the right thing to do. Um, I don't like the usage of faith or God too much, but I guess there is some faith in it. There is a lot of faith that, yes, there are things that you should follow because they're the right thing to do. So it's more of a trust. Like in Hebrew, the faith is the same word as trusting. So I'm trusting that a lot of those things are indeed true. But for Christians, that would be, do you believe in God? And for a Jew, I said this is irrelevant, like really irrelevant.
Interesting. That seems to be a very relevant discussion for today's India's politics as well. So, could you elaborate on this trade versus faith thing further? Let's say specific actions you are taking, which you are considering traditions, but they are probably only created to keep God happy in some ways. Are there any non-God specific traditions as well?
They're all non-God.
Okay.
Nothing is for God.
Interesting.
It's all for you. It's all for you or the environment or the society in general. I don't think there is something that is for God. This is what we call idol worshipping. This is what the Torah is against. If you do something for like, I mean, I guess there were like ceremonies like that in old ancient times when you sacrifice a lamb for God and things like that. Is this God that needs that? I don't know. It's just not. It's been not relevant for like at least 2,000 years. So I guess those questions about like sacrificing and things like that, that those ceremonies that used to be for God and just for God, is it? I guess that would be a new discussion if one day we're gonna rebuild a temple and then okay, what's the purpose of it?
So then what would be the function of a synagogue or a rabbi? Isn't he a sort of a liaison between you and God?
No.
Okay. What is his duty?
No. Teacher?
Moral
Study
teacher.
history? I mean, a lot of things. Psychologist. I mean, it's actually a couple, right? Usually both the rabbi and his wife are the rabbis.
Okay.
And in long time, like it depends, right? Sometimes a rabbi is usually one who's leading a study, and I mean they passed. It's a bit complex. There were like women that also did the traditional men role in history,
Okay.
which is like the traditional rabbi when you say rabbi. But usually there is a community leader role, and there are two community leader roles. There are women and men, and those when the rabbis take the community leader role, then you have to have men and women because they're also kind of used to be like the psychologist, and they would try to help people solve things that have to do more with their soul, or like if they're stressed and things like that, like try to help them resolve things. I also just a lot of times it was to help them understand like what's the right thing to do. Like, okay, if they have questions about how to conduct their traditions, many times in Jewish history, those questions would get recorded, and what the rabbis did behind the scenes is just make fun of the more peasantry questions. It's like just laugh out just about how like who cares kind of questions that people ask. There was one question that a long time that I think some Ashkenazi sent, like I'm talking about Middle Ages, like a really long time ago.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, the ketubah is like a document that proves your marriage, and it got ripped, and he glued it with a paste that was also made of flour. Now we're in Passover, and right now, and in Passover, everything that has flour needs to be eradicated. And then he sent a letter to I think a Sephardic rabbi asking, hey, if I fixed my marriage with glued it up with something that contains flour, does it mean that my marriage is annulled? And like that, and I never heard the answer. I just heard I just saw that like the rabbis were passing that question around, just laughing. It's like about this dude that worries that his marriage is gonna get annulled because he used flour to fix the contract.
Right.
But so yeah, I mean, it's a lot of things.
And
It's
then
not necessarily on God.
what exactly is the role of the synagogue then?
It's where you meet your you meet other people. How do we say it in joking, like in modern terms? It's where you get all the gossip.
Okay. So is it different from a temple or a church?
Yes, because it's loud. Everybody's talking with everybody. It's not like church when you have quiet, and then one pastor goes, like, no, like the synagogue is really loud. People are like joking around and like studying. Like it's a very different experience, and to be honest, I don't like listening to that.
Okay.
It's kind of boring
I
because
see.
you pray, and the prayer is like those prayers supposed to remind you something. And like I remember, it's okay. It's not for me, to be honest. It's
Okay.
more meditative as
Okay.
well.
I see. I've heard that the name Israel itself means to wrestle with God. Is it true?
Mm-hmm.
What is that talking about? What's that sentence about?
It's just like we challenge the status quo, I guess, and like ask questions. So a lot of like Judaism is like you have to ask questions, like why something like it is, like why, you know, and then explore it. A lot of exploration. This is why it's like you don't just accept. You have to study the situation, and then after you study the situation, you're like you have to bring questions.
Incredible. And then, so growing up in this situation, when did you realize the differences between all these things, which is faith and which is not, which is tradition? When did these awarenesses come?
I mean, it's always something. It's something like we talk about it all the time.
I see.
I just give you. I'm sorry for my answers being very Jewish, but this is how a Jew would answer. I can bring you a story, okay? Every question you ask, I'm gonna either answer with a question or a story.
Great.
Just prepare yourself.
Yeah.
So I was in South America not that long ago, and we went a group of Israelis. We went to explore the Amazons, and for several nights we didn't have internet, we didn't have anything. So we sat around the table and started discussing things from the Talmud and arguing about the meaning of what kind of stories are good to follow, and like and what cases it's good, what cases it's not, and we got really argumentative. And and you know, about what we can learn from it, is it applicable to our daily lives and things like that. And they approached our guide and he said and asked him if everything is all right, and he said, yeah, it's all right. The Israelis, I'm used to it. They're probably talking about the Bible or something. Like, so those questions, like, this is an ongoing, like, every day. Like, I remember being 8 years old in the pool, and we had a discussion with the lifeguard about the nature of God, like completely normal, everyday kind of thing. It's like you just grow up with that. You have all those discussions all the time. You bring up different Jewish sources, and then you discuss about like, and how is it still applicable to modern times? If yes, no, and like, you know, and things like that is like, and there is always more material to bring, you know, all more info, more like.
Interesting. When did you first get some knowledge, information about other religions as well? When did you start getting some interest, I guess, in other religions? Christianity, Hinduism, everything.
So I think first I was aware of Christianity because my cousin, she's her dad is Christian, and like
Okay.
my aunt married a Christian man. So for example, so I would go to their house, and her grandma from like her dad's mother would have like a image, you know, of the Madonna with the sun. And I was like, what is this? And she explained, oh, this is Christianity. It's a different religion. To this day, like this, what bothers me, like what from the get-go, right? It's like one of the first commandments, like, do you worship a person? What is that? It's kind of, that was weird to me, but like, I knew there are other religions. I knew about Islam as well. Like we can say Muslims all the time. Like why are you wearing like a headscarf like that? And I was like, okay. So my first impressions, like when I was little, was like that Islam is bad for women.
I see.
And that Christianity, it just seemed like they're worshiping a person to me.
Okay.
When I grew up, like I started understanding more. But to be honest, like I didn't know much about it until even recently, like maybe several years. Like I knew some, but and I knew like historical facts, but like the what's behind it. I mean, I guess you always learn more. I guess it's true for Judaism as well. It's not just. But I was aware that there are other religions.
Now, right before the recent attacks on Israel happened, since that attack, has there been any significant shift in your views about being Jewish or being Israel, at least online? Or has it been the same struggle it's now?
Yes, no, no. I mean, after the attack, I made this whole movie about anti-Semitism because I didn't understand it. It drove me crazy. And then I made this video, and then I understood. That's like, it's not that they're anti-Semitic in general for a reason, right? It's in an ideological fight. So they are against the Jewish ideology in general. All those dictatorships, like all those authoritarians, Judaism goes against authoritarianism. So it's first of all, from what I've realized to learn, that underneath all the noise, that's basically a method of getting rid of those who ask questions. On the most basic, like Israel, like US, we argue, we struggle with God, and we ask questions. And for those who want to have an authoritarian power or power structured society, it makes sense to get rid of those who are nurtured, and like the tradition is to ask questions.
And how diverse are the views about Palestine inside Israel? Are there people opposing the Israeli state or the existence of the state, etc.? Like some Jews are apparently doing in the US. People who think Israel is wrong.
I mean, there are very few. I mean, those are people who think that they shouldn't exist, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, there's a sentence, Hitler had a Jewish friend.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and that he said about him, like, in all of my life, I had one Jewish friend that was a decent human being.
Yeah.
And then he did the right thing. You know what he did?
Yeah. So
He killed himself,
yeah.
for those who don't know.
Yeah. So are there leftists in Israel who think that Israel is wrong? What is the leftist view in Israel?
The
on these
leftist
matters?
view in Israel,
Yeah.
the leftist view is strengthen the army, and I mean, I don't think they think. I think they're just crazy, to be honest. I don't think most of them don't have views. They're just like bipolar, like they contradict each other if you talk to them. Like, they contradict themselves, not each other. Like, they contradict themselves. Like, you ask them a question, they give you a logical answer. You ask them another question, they give you a little bit less of a logical answer, and there's like, don't you see the contradiction? And they just get stuck, and you see the three dots up above their heads, and they're like, and then they just, like, you know, they have like a booting, like they reboot their brain, and they start from again from the point where they stopped.
Yeah. That seems to be the description of leftists all around the world. So,
Yeah.
what are your? When did you first learn of the Palestine problem growing up, and what do you think of the state of Palestine?
I think it's just a plot to kill Jews 100%. I don't. It's not a real thing. It doesn't make sense like at all. Like Arabs are way happier to be Israeli citizens. So why would they want to? No, it's because like if you look at the history of it, it's not about anything. They are actually like they all see themselves as the Palestinians, right? They all see themselves as martyrs, as in it's more their lives are not important. What's important is that the Jews will not exist. This is the only thing they care about. Like this is the all Palestinian identity is based on killing Jews, like 100%. If you take that away, you're literally left with nothing. Which I really looked for something else. I really looked for anything else, like their national, like national poems, all talk about Jews, right? They talk about like their national, like how can you lose to, how could the great Arabs lose to people like the Jews who don't know how to dress and they can't even form a line properly. They are the most unstructured society that ever existed, and they somehow beat us. And then, but everything is about the Jews. Like everything is about us. Like nothing stands alone. And even if you look about like what they invented, their inventions and everything like that, nothing is independent of us. Like nothing is something that is for the betterment of the life. Nothing. It's all like suicide vests and stuff like that. It's like it's crazy. Like so what's this nation? It's like it's not a nation. They don't have anything. Sorry, my voice is like
And do you think do you buy into the argument that it's a country problem or just a Hamas problem, or do you think it's a religion problem, or do you think the religionists of
it's a global
Muslims of
problem.
that's
No, I'll say
just
more.
Palestine?
It's more than a religion.
Okay.
It's the I'll tell you, it's the Amalek, it's the psychotic, sociopath, narcissistic kind of thinking versus the productive, generating, civilization building kind of thinking. This is why communism goes into that. It's the people that they think that they deserve everything just for being. Just like the moment you are born, the world owes everything to you.
Yeah.
Versus those who are like, hey, we all have to put in effort to build something.
That also
So
seems
I
to
would
be.
say it's beyond religion, because the
I see.
religion, the Islam, it reflects human society. It reflects some part of humanity, the side of humanity. And there is a side of humanity, a type of people that would take and take and take until everybody's dead, them included.
When did you reach this conclusion, after thinking all of your life, or at a pretty young age itself?
When I was making that video about anti-Semitism, when I realized what it really was, because I compared it. You know what, there's the Jews, but there are also other groups. You know, Chinese were considered for a long time the Jews of the East Asia. The history of the Chinese is very similar to the history of the Jews.
Okay.
In East Asia. So they went through the same, like they were persecuted in Indonesia and like all those countries where they went to. Many times they were the ones that managed the society, the finances and things like that. And they were persecuted in a very similar way that the Jews were. And if you take to account what the Japanese did to the Chinese during World War II, for example, I mean, the Chinese, they grew numerous, right? They had their own country and everything like that. So that in that sense, it's different. But the Chinese people outside of China, did like have a similar kind of experience. But it's not just like, it's also the Armenians and other kind of Armenians that were massacred. Assyrians were massacred. So I wanted to understand like what makes Jews different. Because it does feel, because Jews get way more attention, but then I realized like Jews are the symbol of a certain ideology that those who don't believe in merit, let's say it like that, trying to eradicate.
Interesting. And I have to get to one question which is being asked by an audience member here, which is one of the perpetual questions on our mind, on many people in India's mind, that how is Israel doing this one particular thing which all industrialized on first world nations have failed at, which is have a high fertility rate and people still falling in love, getting married at the right age, so to speak. And still nothing is hampering their progress, not the progress of the women themselves. How is this happening? How are women not considering marriage as something opposed to their progress?
Because the babies don't belong. What's happening in the Western world and many other places is like women give birth and that's their problem. They are left alone with their babies for months in their apartment, which is a psychological damage that women cannot handle. Women and it's cruel. It's cruelty. It's not natural. Baby, like it's so difficult. So when you have a whole society that celebrates babies, that you can, I saw it so many times, you can go to a bar or something like that, and somebody a stranger would be holding your baby when you need to do something. It's a very different experience when the baby is 100% in your care and nobody's helping you, and it's your problem, and it's not even celebrated that much. Like here, every baby is like every baby is like it's for all of us. It's for all of us, It's something that to be happy about, and everybody's happy about, and it's for all of us.
And since you have been to the West, I guess, growing up, wouldn't you say that up until, let's say, 20, 30 years back, the West was also pretty much like that? It was not just the woman thrust with all the duties and her raising the baby alone. When did that change for the West, do you think, or how? And how did Israel prevent that?
I think it was. I don't think it ever changed for the West. I think it's just that what happened is that 20 years ago, or it's like, have you heard of like the American suburbs? Like I saw this documentary that really blew up my mind. Like when it was built in the 50s, it was like super cheap and everybody could live there. But what happened is that now the maintenance is more expensive than everything there. Like just because everything, you have so much concrete per person, per family. So suddenly it's super expensive. So you have a situation where it's not like, if you have a lot of housewives, everybody's helping each other, it's one thing. But then but now you have a situation when everybody's isolated, and then the economy is harder, and people are like, and then there is no mercy for women or for men in that society. I feel like it's like you get to the age of 18 and you get kicked out, or like for a lot of families. So I think it can it can be sustainable. Like one generation you can do that, because like the women are like, it catches them by surprise. It's not like they saw the mothers suffering from that fate,
right.
But then the next generation, the daughters already saw what happened to their mothers. You cannot do the same thing again.
Now, the West stopping taking care of, or let's say never taking care of them, if at all it was sometime happening, because the fertility rate was not a problem forever in the West. It's now becoming a problem even in India. Now, how much of that blame do you think lies on society not taking care of the women, or the society not taking care of the women because of some things they were taught in the academia? liberal arts academia, or because of the ideas that stem out of classical liberalism itself, like individualism, etc.?
So I think it's a lot because the expectations from women went up and the expectation from men went down. They didn't even go up. So suddenly like men feel like they can pressure women to get an abortion, for example. So they're like, okay, they can make a mistake and not take responsibility for that. And like this, especially in the US, have you seen this bro culture? It's like, oh, women are like, if you have a society that pressures men to step up, then yeah. So the thing is like the equality is that the equality of expectations. You need to expect from men more. And for example, I can tell you in Judaism, woman, it's the obligation to get married and have kids is not on women. Women are not obligated to get married and they're not obligated to have kids. The men are.
Okay.
The men are obligated. And that completely changes the spectrum because women have a natural disadvantage. So men, to balance that, men need an artificial disadvantage where they are the ones who get pressured by society to get married and have kids, not the woman. If you pressure the men to do that, then the woman would be like, it would be at a stage where like, oh, it's fair. Okay, the men are being pressured and we have our own biological disadvantage. Then yes, we can like make it work.
And then how is feminism ending up helping men, therefore? How is this happening?
I don't think that was the intention of feminism, but I think this is what happens is that those in power, even with feminism, were still men. So they took the parts of feminism that they liked and ignored those they didn't.
Yeah.
Easy.
Pretty much.
They're like, oh, you want to work? Perfect. And then that's where it stopped.
Yeah. Do you like Ben Shapiro?
Yes and no. Because I think, okay, so this is something that I say sometimes, that I see a lot of people like the Rambam is someone I like complaining about because he grew up in a Muslim environment. So a lot of his writings, I can see the Islamic thought in them and it drives him crazy. So when it comes to Ben Shapiro, sometimes I see the Christian thought in him and I was like, this one is like, oh, that's Christian, it's Christian.
I see.
But I do like him in general, yeah.
What do you think is Christian about his thoughts? Especially the parts you don't like.
The way he talks about abortions, for example, it's a completely Christian manner.
I see.
That's Christian talk. Like because like I said before, if you want to get rid of abortions, you have to build a society where every baby is celebrated. And then it's because I think, like, again, it goes against human nature for a woman to go and get an abortion. That's her going against herself. So there is a societal situation where women feel like they have to go against themselves, against their instincts. Unless it's a very, very like awful situation where the pregnancy got obtained, right? But even then, like what happens what happened in Judaism says it a lot, like woman life is more important. And when the way that kid was, like, if it was violent rape and things like that, a lot of times it's like, it can also be the risk that the child will be like that because there isn't a genetic element. But there is a high risk of the woman going, hurting herself and hurting her child. So sometimes, like, you have to cut your losses. It's like, would this woman want to give birth again, ever, if she gives birth? Because you know what, maybe having 3 future kids is better than having 1 kid now. And another thing is that and then on every other case almost, right, unless it's a very special type of woman, which we need to understand, like we should like treat it as is, it's rarity. And if all women are now going against themselves and against their biological instincts to end the pregnancies, then the problem is not the abortion clinic per se, the problem is everything around it.
Very interesting. Okay, so on abortion, you don't agree with Ben Shapiro, I'm guessing. And I was reminded of Ben Shapiro because of that very argument that even he points out that feminism ended up being great for men. Women were working and also had the abortion pills or the contraceptives, etc.
Yeah, because now it's a situation where women get forced to get abortions. It's not really natural. That's what I'm saying. But the thing I disagree with, like with the Christian view, is that you go out and you find the wrong monster. If you get rid of abortion clinics, that's not the right thing to, that's not where the monster is. What you'll get is a situation like South America, where you have slums upon slums of a 14-year-old woman that got pregnant and dumped, and now they're living basically on the street in a situation where you cannot even imagine, just living day to day, and those kids are just turning into criminals.
Yeah.
This is not the way to go. This is the other way. This is what happens in South America. The Christianity is strong. They took out the abortion clinics, but they killed both the mother and the future of the children when they did that.
Well said.
So what are you fighting? You need to fight the reason women get abortion, not the abortions themselves.
Right. What would you say to the argument that since the baby is also a person who is just a little younger, therefore the abortion means directly murdering the baby? Would you say that? Would you say it's equal to murdering a baby?
Listen, let's be honest here. We're from the Middle East. Like, I don't know, it was, you know how many accounts are there of infant abortions?
No.
Like, you know how many accounts are that women give birth to girls and just kill them on the spot?
Right.
Is that better? Like, you cannot do that. Like this woman, to kill your own child. Can you imagine what they thought their girls would, what kind of future were they having? Like, think about women that give birth in Afghanistan and give birth to a girl.
So
You know, so you're talking about an abortion, like that's humane. That's a situation that's humane.
Yeah.
This is not natural. But if women feel like they have to kill their girls, because by the way, this is something people don't talk about, but the women in Islamic world, they are not the same numbers as men at all. Like there is a significant less, like they killed them. That's what happens. They don't, like, you think those people, they go and hunt women in Europe for nothing? No, their women are dead. That's why they have to marry children. That's why they have to go out and try to steal women from Europe, because they don't have them. They kill them. So what do I think about that? I think that you have to face reality. And if there is a reality, you can bring a society to a reality where women kill their baby girls because it's better to be dead than to be alive in this world. Then what is an abortion? You know, it's nothing. So if there are so many abortions happening, something is deeply wrong with the society. This is what you need to fix.
Is there any abortion debate in Israel?
No.
Okay, so everyone is in favor of keeping abortions legal.
The abortions in Israel, you have to go through a committee. There are several scenarios where you get an abortion. You can get an abortion, but in general, it's like it has clear like limits, right? It's clear boundaries. But in general, like people are being like taught that pregnancies and babies are something to celebrate. So even if it's like teen pregnancy, I think something like that you know of, nobody would ever say anything negative to you. Like like even if they think it, in general, like the at least the way I grew up is that you have to celebrate it.
And why do you think it's different in Islam and Christian societies then, Muslim and Christian societies?
Because I think Christians take a lot of things very, like they are very proper. So Christians are like, okay, there are things that are okay, there are things that are not okay. It's very black and white kind of thinking.
Right.
Christian tendency to be very black and white. Judaism is like, if you take one Jew and ask him one question, it's gonna give you 3 answers, because there is no black and white in Judaism. It's a spectrum. Everything is in a spectrum, right? There is always, okay, what is, like, there is always a question. Okay, this case, what's more tragic, this or that? In Christianity, I think it's way more black and white in general. You can also see that because, like, in Christianity, they would like persecute each other for the smallest things. I can tell you, like, in Orthodox Christianity in the Russia, like they used to like do the cross with 2 fingers, and then they came up with this new revelation that you actually have to do it with 3 fingers, and they had a fight over it, and all those that kept doing that had to be persecuted, and they had to escape Russia. This is the thing that, like, in Christianity is like that I feel is like, why is everything so black and white? And Islam always, or this is what I'm saying a lot in my channel, Islam almost went extinct completely. It was revived by the West.
Interesting. And okay, now what are your views on communism, and when did you first learn of the word communism? What did you start thinking about them growing up?
I mean, my family escaped communism. My mom's family were anti-communistic regime. They like how is it called? Like, they fought against it, like my my mom's uncle was beaten up by the KGB. There are like people are like prisoner for Zion, like always looking for a way out, things like that. So I grew up like with communism is like, it's really bad. It's a bad thing, even though I didn't understand what it was. But later I did. So yeah.
At what age did you learn of communism, the economic visions or the societal visions of communism?
I don't remember. Probably high school, maybe? I don't know.
I see. Were you taught about these things in high school?
Yeah.
That how bad communism was?
We were like the Holodomor. Have you heard of it?
No.
So after they restructured and decided to get rid of all the management so what happened was that there was a whole starvation in Ukraine. I think, I don't know, like 3 million died of starvation, or I don't know, maybe more. I don't remember how many, maybe I just don't remember the number, like millions died, I think, of starvation. And then what happened in China with 50, 60 million dying of starvation. It's like, this is what you're like, what do you think when you take away the middleman? You cannot take away the middleman. Somebody needs to manage the shipment. Somebody needs to manage what goes where. Somebody has to do that kind of job. So once you don't do that, and you get and everybody are farmers and things like that, but you still have to feed the cities.
Right. And do you get into capitalism versus communism debates these days? So I guess what I'm asking is your criticism or let's say dislike for communism because they ended up screwing Russia and millions of Chinese people, Russian people, or do you have a problem with this general idea of equality or the things that communism proposes to do itself?
The communism doesn't propose anything. Communism is constant revolution. The revolution never ends. This is what communism is. You always go up against those who are above you. There is nothing in communism to really talk about it. There is nothing there. It's an empty statement. So what's the discussion? It's like, what's coming? Move on.
And how much are you in favor of, let's say, freebies from the government?
Well, it depends on the situation, because to be honest, like, I cannot say I'm 100% like capitalistic either. Look at us, Israel. What would we be without a strong military? And what happens to those who lose their houses because their rockets hit them?
Yeah.
Like, no matter what, like 100% capitalistic society, like getting like those kind of situations that happen here, you need to take care of them. It's like, yeah, we pay higher taxes, and this is like, yes, we pay high taxes because of our security needs. Is it fun? No. Is it ideal? No. The ideal is to make it as small as possible and to try to move it to local communities as much as possible. But sometimes the whole community gets strike, right? So what happens is, like, at least in like Judaism, you take care of your community, and then you take care of your city, and then so what is, if something happens in the community, all the members of a community are responsible to help, right? Which makes sense. But here is a situation like in the South now. Like, what happens if the whole community is now homeless and refugees? It's the state. We have to help them, right? In the state condition. So is it because they're lazy? No. Is it because they don't want to work? No. It's because a catastrophe happened. And we happen to be in a place where there is more chance to have catastrophe. So are the taxes higher than with what would be ideal? Yes, but that's life.
Okay, now getting into the debate that Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens are having, or let's say many other people as well, in the Daily Wire versus people who are America first. Where do you
I'm
have
gonna
you taken
tell
a
you
side
that
on that
I'm not
argument?
that informed.
Okay,
I'm not that informed.
the debate is between whether America should increase its funding for Israel, etc. What do you think of that?
Oh, those
The,
are the idiots who don't understand how the dollar works.
hmm,
That it's all fake.
yeah.
That like the world agrees to trade with the dollar and keep it stable like it is because there's this American promise that it would keep the world stable. If there is a chance that the world will start ditching the dollar, then the dollar would be fluctuating and things like that. Then things would go super expensive in their countries. Suddenly, that tax money that they have to pay to billions here and there wouldn't seem like this much of a catastrophe to them. I mean, they don't do their minimum of the due diligence to understand how the American economy works before they come and say, oh, this is such a waste of taxpayer money.
Right.
Like, you take advantage of the rest of the world. Either you know why? It's like, we are here, where are your soldiers? It's your people who are gonna die here, or us. Decide, like, which ones do you choose? Or just be like your own little island, but then everything's going to be expensive. You're not going to have Chinese or Indian workers that will do the dirty like jobs for you in sweatshops, and then you can wear like your Shane clothes and be like, oh, I have so many clothes. No, every piece of clothes is going to be expensive.
Yeah.
Are you ready to have this kind of world? If yes, then I say start now, become more sustainable. Build build industries in the United States where you when you create your own clothes.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Just prepare the ground and not get it in a catastrophic way where you just lose everything. No, just like go gradually into that. At least be responsible.
Yeah.
If that's what you want, America can be an isolationist, yes, 100%, but you have to prepare for what that means.
And do you think they are getting so many illegal immigrants in their country because they are basically going to take your advice? They are going to start up their manufacturing back?
No, I think those are not the kind of illegal immigrants.
Okay.
If you want people who work in sweatshops, that would be the women that have no choice because they're trying to feed their babies while the men are like, hell knows where they are. No, that's not there is no brains there. I think I think that what happened is that the Democratic Party and maybe the whole government, I think a lot. So it also happened, by the way, in the 40s and the 50s, right? a lot of communists infiltrated the deep state of the
I
government.
see. Okay.
And they were working from inside the deep state, trying to destabilize the United States. But now you literally have them, like, not only in the deep state, you have them in the parliament, right? You have the Islamists and the communists and things like that, people who are working in broad daylight, not just on the, because in the deep state departments, like in the intelligence department, a lot of times they bring like Iranians to do the Iranian intelligence. Not always that those Iranians are actually loyal to the United States, which is incredibly funny and interesting to me, because this is why they really try to avoid Jews, because Jews have double loyalty with Israel. But what about all the others that you bring? What about them? They also have double loyalty. Did you forget that every person in the US is supposed to like
Exactly.
immigrated from somewhere? And like, oh, you think those Chinese people that they don't have double loyalty? I was like, it's amazing, because they were really like, the deep state was persecuting Jews because they were like, oh, you guys have double loyalties with Israel. But I'm sorry, Israel shares the same values as you do. So you prefer those who don't to destabilize what. And now you enjoy that. Like, you know, these people, like they fill the ranks, you know, they brought more and more people of their sort. And now you have on bright daylight people like Ilhan Omar that publicly states that her loyalty is to Somalia, and also calls for a genocide inside of Somalia. And you know, and that is not the United States. All right, so now it's not even deep state anymore. It's just literally this state. It's a problem.
Do you think?
But yeah.
Do you think they are being allowed to get into the country because of let's say hiring them in the military as well, because they have lost their fertility rates, so maybe they need lots of men to fight?
No, because first of all, America is still America. They can just increase the number of green cards they give. Like literally bring Indians. Why don't you bring Hindus? It makes so much more sense to bring Hindus. They're not going to explode. There isn't a risk. There are billion and a half Indians. I'm just saying that Israel now, it learned its lesson. Like it, I mean, we had Thai people before, but now we're replacing all the Palestinian workers with Hindus. And it's like people are like, yeah, Hindu, we can bring Hindu. Hindu is not the problem. It's not Islam.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, now.
But before that, it was Thai, so it was also okay. But like, if you want to bring people, just you can bring them, but just like filter them a little bit, you know.
We have some questions for you from the audience. Let's say. Wait, where did they go? Yeah. What is the relationship between chief rabbinate and Israeli state? How does secularism work in a Jewish state?
So it's first of all, like Israel is not. So first of all, Judaism is not like you have ultra-Orthodox Jews and everything like that. True, but they don't follow everything that's Jewish. They're also like a sect in Judaism.
I see.
And secular Judaism are also Jews, like working the land, like the farmers are. This is just as much part of Judaism as, like, you know, eating kosher. Let's say, like, no, like is that more important or is that more important? Like this is like thing that they did, like, so the thing is that what happened is that when Israel was established, all the sects of Judaism had to cooperate because they said, like the UN said, we're not going to give you a state unless all the Jews agree, all of them, even the sects that believe that we need to wait to the Messiah, and that are in that sense anti-Zionist, that they think that the state of Israel would make it impossible for the Messiah to come. Even they had to agree. So it created a weird situation where we had to like make those adjustments and like have those representatives like that of those sects. But it doesn't mean that the secular part is not Jewish. It just that those ultra, like this is Judaism that was kind of Judaism with the hats and everything. This sort of Judaism was invented in the last 200 years.
I see.
250 years. It's not, I know it's like, okay, but no, all of the Israelis that you meet are very Jewish. It's not something you can take, because Judaism is a lot more than wearing a hat. Also, like the kippah thing, it's from the Zohar, it's not from the Talmud. It's like it depends on the books of Judaism you follow. A lot of things are.
I see.
But it is like something that most Jews accept. Also, head covering for women. It's more a tradition than a real thing. It's not a must. But so Judaism is flexible. You can debate almost anything, but there are things but there are moral guidelines. It's like the question, is it moral or not? Even when it comes to the Sabbath, right? So the goal was there is like the morality there is that people would work themselves to death because they didn't have a day break. So Judaism said you have one day that you don't work because of human rights.
I see.
So then when the question is like, okay, do you work on Saturday or not? It's like you have to show, if you want to have a proper Jewish debate, if like that, a lot of people just don't want to get into it, but they do. It's like, how do you make sure that there isn't a situation where people don't get a day off like every week? Or how do you make sure that it's like it doesn't become a situation when where people don't get to rest, or that kind of society. Like it's a complex, just like because they represent a certain side of Judaism and it's integrated to the general society, so there is a lot of like debate. But that doesn't mean that the secular Jews don't represent. And most of them do still represent Judaism. It's only there are very small segments that don't represent Judaism at all, like really, really secular.
I see.
But those are a minority even inside the most secular Jews.
Okay. What is secularism according to you? Because it seems to have a different meaning as in India versus everywhere else. How do you define secularism?
Secularism depends. Like it can be two things. It can be not knowing the Torah. It's usually like it's a combination of not knowing and not following.
Okay.
So, but also going, let's say, going against. But something that communism, for example, if a Jew tells me he's a communist, then all right, that's a secular person.
Okay.
For example, because I think it's like, okay, this is not Judaism, and you are not, because Judaism part of is a system, is also like a moral system. If you follow communism, then you have a different moral system than Judaism.
Right. Do you think how the flexibilities that you are talking of in Judaism, do you think Israel and let's say even specifically Judaism is safe, or do you think it's vulnerable because of these flexibilities? Do these flexibilities make Israel and Jewish society stronger or vulnerable?
It has to be because of okay, so if you lose that flexibility, if you take, for example, those ultra-Orthodox sects, when they take it too far, we make fun of them and we start calling them Muslims, because that's not Judaism anymore. And if you take the super Jews that are like everything black and white, then they think like Christians. It's like it's more than a lot of people that come and like they're not Jews, and then they get to meet even for example, I don't know if you know who EP is, but when he came, he has a very Jewish soul. He have a very Jewish way of thinking, and even he said he even met rabbis. The rabbis just look at him and was like, you, it was clear, they think you are a Jew, So it's more than it's yes, we're like with Jews, but that we keep it and everything like that. But any person that is born with certain characteristics can one day, even if we all go instinct, can one day pick up the Torah and the Jewish writings, study it, and he's a Jew.
Okay. And
Because it's morality. It's the code of, like, it's the culture of debate. It's the history of the Jewish people. It's the whole thing, from learning in the desert that every person has to give their share to society to be independent, and you cannot blame anyone else for anything. And from like like all those stories, all this history, yes, it's Jewish, but there is a reason Christianity and Islam grew out of it, because it can be global in its core. But both Christianity and Islam lost the core, right? The core of Judaism, where it's debate, where it's discussion of morality, where it's always seeking and asking and looking how to improve. And like, a lot of times, like, Islam is like, oh, Judaism is not the right religion. Look at Jews, because they always change, they always update, they always decide new things, they always reinterpret. Nothing is set in stone.
Right.
Like, not God, the God in the beginning of the Bible is not the God in the end of the Bible. The God in, like, everything changes all the time. And we observe, like, we learn, like Jews would say, hey, those are philosophies that we learned from the Greeks. Those are philosophies that we learned from the Hindus. Those are different things, and we integrate it, because you have to understand Judaism is always seeking for the moral code, for the moral way of like life, but it also have like parts that are just meant to preserve the Jewish people as a community. So it has like this understanding that you cannot just keep the moral code, because kids do not understand that. They would not understand that, and there would be Jewish societies that will not be able to follow that. So we have some things that we do, and out of 1,000 Jews, one Jew would really understand Judaism.
And this,
but that's good enough. We need this one Jew out of 1,000. The rest of the other 1,000 just need to live a lifestyle or conduct themselves in a way where Judaism can be saved and preserved, even if it's just by copying the books or just like and studying it, until this one person that appears in 1 in 1,000 is like, oh, it really gets it.
And is this is a fascinating thing. This explanation that you just gave of Judaism or Israeli society, is this common knowledge in Israel, or is it your personal interpretation of the situation? Can any Jew explain this to me in this exact same manner?
I think Jews would explain it in a lot of the very different manners, but I heard the same kind of explanation being given in literally different ways, but the bottom line is the same from so many different sects of society. Like, I heard the rabbis say it. I heard the most secular, a little bit more left-leaning people talk, and then they say the same things.
I see.
They use different wording. They use different ways to try to make people reach the same conclusion. But the bottom line is very consistent among a lot of people that I heard talking. The kids, if you ask kids, they usually don't know anything yet. They're too young. Yeah. It depends. It depends. People learn it as they go. It's not. There is a reason, like we say, God they said this and that. Is like, it's also for children to learn. It's not always that you can understand what you understand later in life, and it's gradual. But those who like in in leadership positions that I saw get interviewed and things like that, they get it. Most of them get it.
This is a phenomenal thing, and I'm very excited about this particular explanation that you gave, because this seems very similar to an argument, a proponent of a person who's usually credited with coming up with the idea of Hindutva, His name is Veer Savarkar. I think you should read that man. Read his books. Recently, a movie came out on him.
It's really fascinating because there for a long time, like Judaism and Hindu, like only had like a little bit of interaction, right? So it's interesting to. The more I see people start, like now in modern times, there is more possible interaction between Jews and Hindus, and it seems that there are some parallels that are different from any other kind of.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah. So who is it again? Can
Veer
you
Savarkar.
explain?
VEER SAVARKAR.
I'll ask you to send it to me later. I'm not gonna pretend that I.
Yeah.
But I mean, what is his name then? If you can.
He was an Indian revolutionary, first and foremost, trying to kick the British out, and he was concerned about Indian unity because there are so many religions in this land, so many people, so many languages, so many traditions, so many gods even. So who really is a Hindu? His definition of Hindu seems to me your definition of Jews, basically, or is basically Jews. So he was all about, let's say, unless you have a hatred for me right now, I don't have any problem with you. I don't want to kick you out because you're British. I want to kick you out because you are living here illegally and you are creating problems for my country. If you go out of the country and from the next day we can be friends, and maybe I can help you out if some other country is trying to oppress you. That's the same with Muslims. He was in favor of knowing what Islamic kings did here, but he had no problem with Muslims in the current day. If you just say you don't have a problem with me as a Hindu, if you don't have a problem with me, I don't have a problem with you. That was his idea of anyone identifying with this landmass of India as a Hindu.
But that doesn't make a Muslim a Hindu, or does it?
If their loyalty lies to India, the sacredness of India, then you will be allowed to be called Hindu.
So a little bit like that talk about Israeliness, right? Versus. Right. So it's actually a good question. It's like it's the question of Gerim. I mean, a different discussion we can have. Like
we'll need you back sometime soon to discuss this as well. Another question I wanted to get to you to in this context only is there competition between these different sects of Judaism inside Israel? Is one trying to prove that they are better and the right Jews?
No, they just argue.
Okay.
They just like arguing.
What's the platform like? Like in a synagogue on a random day, or there are specific events that when these religious debates
everywhere, all the time.
Okay.
Great. And it's also per topic. Don't like Judaism doesn't like. Here's the thing that people don't understand. You can appreciate one rabbi for one thing and disagree on another. And you need to like you take what you know the things that you value, that you think that needs to be like a common agreed upon statement. And there are things that you can say, okay, this I think should not be that. And the Talmud and a lot of like they give million examples of that. They also have rabbis that they show that they went crazy as they grew up, but it doesn't mean that the things that they said in their youth wasn't important or applicable, right? Or wasn't smart. Same like, so yes, we have different sects and everything, but like people in Israel, how does it work when it seems like everybody's supposed to blow up? Because how can you put the national ultra-Orthodox Jews versus the messianic waiting Netulei Karta in the same room? And like the truth is just we cooperate where we agree, we argue where we don't.
Great. Someone is asking you, I don't remember who this man is, I just remember the name. Someone is asking you, what does she think about Norman Finkelstein?
He's a psychopath from what I've seen. I know he's just a supposed Jew that is just going around and bashing Israel.
I see.
But like,
what's his justification?
To be honest, from what I've seen, it looks like he doesn't know the Torah, and he goes against the moral code of Judaism. So
I see. What's his argument? Is he like is he saying Israel is a colonizer?
I think it's just a token Jew. A lot of times they just you got stuck for 1 second. I'm sorry. No, I mean the screen froze. So Israel, what's his perspective? Nothing. I think he makes money out of it. A lot of like this is what a lot of times what happens is that they want someone that was like who would be able to claim that he's a Jew to say things that they want to hear, not the truth. And then they pay them. It's like it's what happens.
I see. Weird people. We have such weird people in our country as well. Okay.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, then Rebecca,
Like
thank
I
you very
said,
much for joining our live
thank
stream.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Finish
so
your
much.
sentence. Go on.
No, I said, just like there are people who have nothing to do with Judaism who can pick up Judaism and let's say connect with a kind of thinking and moral code that Judaism presents and be Jewish. There are people who are born Jews and do not understand it, do
Right.
not appreciate it, and I mean there are less generation Jews. That's it.
But the number of such people is, I guess, extremely low inside Jewish community, right?
Yes, which is crazy because look how many of them are getting get to represent us. When it's like, no, it's not common. It's not the common view at all.
Right.
But they all go up and so as a Jew. Okay.
Okay. We have one question about some Jewish conspiracy again. Let's see. What does she think about George Soros Rothschild family and conspiracy theory that Judeo-Christian started Freemasonry Illuminati?
First of all, like Christianity Christianity is Judaism at its core. Okay. The split was from the outside. The Roman Empire decided to say, okay, this is like, it's not inner. Because at some point they just became Christian and they dropped all the things that make you Jewish, like argumentativeness and pluralism, things like that. There's like, or like Passover, like the holidays, and they moved to making Christmas and things like that. But that took like 400 years. This wasn't fat. It wasn't a cutthroat thing. You could have like Jews that believe in Jesus and Jews that don't believe in Jesus, and like people didn't see them as different people. So you can do whatever, like you can use that and say that everything that's Christian is also, but it's not true, because a lot of things in Christianity really, really like stranded far away from Judaism. Same with Islam, and the core of it is not understanding pluralism. But yeah, so you have this, this crazy fights between Protestants and Catholics and things. But Soros and Rothschild family, I don't know. I wouldn't put them in the same category. The Rothschild family really did a lot to help the Jewish community. The George Soros, sold the Jews to the Nazis when he was a child to make money.
Yeah.
This is very different.
Right.
And also Rothschild is a whole family, like that's a whole thing. I don't know, it's complicated. Like I said, some things you agree with, some things you disagree with. And with George Soros, the fact that he likes selling Jews for a living is something I strongly disagree with.
Okay, now we have lots of interesting questions coming at the end of our interview. I don't know if this is happening or not, but someone is asking you, why is IDF pulling out its troops from Gaza? Are they pulling out?
No, they're just entering Rafah right now, from what I know.
Okay. Someone is asking you, have you studied Jewish numerology or gematria?
Yes, and I said this is bullshit and left.
Okay. Someone is asking you, does Israeli education system teach Judaism in schools?
Yes.
Okay. In which classes? All through your school?
Well, we have Bible studies, but also like it's integrated in the way we talk and speak and the stories we tell. Like if we have a discussion, then it would also like in literature and things, but like I can how can I explain? Like you use like phrases use phrases that rabbis said like on your daily speech, like why are you being lazy? And then you bring up something from like a story from the Talmud to make your child stop being lazy. It's integrated.
I
It's
see.
not foreign. It's natural,
But is there like then a maths class, history class, then a Judaism class in school?
No, there is no Judaism class.
I
There
see.
is a studies class, like Bible studies class. There is
Okay.
Mishnah classes, or
Okay.
you
Okay.
can have Talmud classes. But like where I grew up, it was only Bible studies. But
Okay.
it doesn't say Judaism.
I see. And is that for all ages or up until some specific age?
All ages. You
I see.
start, I think, second grade. You
Okay.
start reading the Torah. It's a very exciting thing, We have this. We go to the synagogue all together, and we celebrate starting learning the Torah.
And is that for non-Jewish kids as well?
Yes, but we study the books. It's not. It's not. How do you say that? If it is a Judaism class, can you say like a history class is Judaism class? Like that's our history as well. Like this is what I'm trying to tell
Right.
to like for Christians. You read the Bible and you think, oh, those are stories and like things to. And it's like we read the Bible. That's our history book. It's like, it's
Very
like it's
interesting.
different experience. It's like
Many Indians will like your
this
answer.
that yeah.
And is it optional? Can you, if let's say if you're not Jewish, maybe you don't want to take that class, is that an option?
I think we have like also like Christians and Muslim schools. I don't
Okay.
think you study that there necessarily.
I
They
see.
have a different curriculum.
Okay. But if a Muslim is studying in that Jewish school, they have to take that
Yes.
class.
Yeah.
And is it allowed for anyone to study in any school?
Yes.
Great. Okay, some more questions. Do Israeli general public, the common Israeli masses, do they think that they can live with Islamic people peacefully in the same country? How do people look at Arabs after October 7?
Oh, listen, the fact that like nothing is new, right? It's how do they look? Is the great like they understand that the hope was that they would manage, like they would take steps to go out of it and not take more steps to develop like to basically they sank all the way to the darkness. The hope was that they would be able to take little steps towards more in a Jewish view, more moral conduct and like for us growing up, like the number one thing is like the way they treat women. Like the hope is okay if we can manage to get them the better the treatment of women, we can take them step by step out of it, and the hope is that okay, maybe with modern times, with the internet, even those in Gaza would be able to do that. But October 7th showed us that not only they didn't do that, is that they completely fallen into this dark pit of radical. I don't want to say radical, just Islam. It's just Islam, but
How do you see the progress of UAE then, which seems to be a pretty accepting society, or maybe even Saudi Arabia is trying to get to that route?
Don't you know they took out Islam from their school books?
Yeah. Do you think that is the
They're
reason
fighting
it
it.
is possible?
Yes.
Okay. So you have no hopes from a devout Muslim being accepting of other religions or Jewish people.
How can you be a devout Muslim and be a good person?
Yeah.
Like it's not like maybe you can be, but like to a certain degree. You can pray 5 times a day with being devout, but to follow it really, the thing is like, how do you perceive it, like Islam? Is like, can you be halfway Muslim and be devout? I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah, it seems to me that you know Islam pretty well. Let's leave it at that. Okay, another question we have. Can the guests suggest some good Substack handles that provide a holistic perspective on Israel-Palestine conflict? And the second question is from the same person. Does Israeli government support their religious institutions? Or is it publicly funded with your own personal donations?
Oh, so it's a good question because it was supported by the government, and now the court issued an order that it has to go from the government to the public.
I see. Okay.
So that's you hit the nail in the head. It's exactly what's like the big like controversy that thing that's happening right now.
I see.
The other question of the Substacks, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
I really don't really know.
Okay. Let's see if there are any more questions. No, it's just people are really happy with your answers. Someone is saying, okay, this is the last comment. Damn, she came out with guns blazing. Okay, looks like we'll need you back to discuss other stuff as well. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for joining us.
I would love to. By the way, you can follow my YouTube channel as well, guys, if you want to.
Yeah, I think I forgot to post the link of that channel. I'll do it in my description box.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody. Hope to visit India soon too.
Yes, please do. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.